I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello. Good morning. Good evening. Good day. Good afternoon. And aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Sorry for the little bit of a late start, you guys. We're having some technical difficulties, but we got it all straightened out. We're here for you. Thank you for being patient. Before we get started, of course, we got to pay some bills. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Also, want to send you a reminder that this show will be available on iTunes, Spotify, podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. You can listen to this on the road, at work, at home while you're cooking. Settle the sweet sounds of Rather Be Squidding, Jane Kyle, and me, Luis Jimenez. Leave us a rating review. It goes a very long way. I want to say thank you to the Patreon members out there and the future members of Patreon. If you haven't joined Patreon, please check it out. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show. We are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you, so it goes a very, very long way. Thank you very much. Super chats are open if you got a dying question. Great way to get in there. I see that we have some of our members here, like Sparky Lady. You'll notice that her name is in green. Matthew Riots as well. Thank you so much, Matthew Riot, for being a member. Sparky Lady again. You guys can join up, be a member, and yeah, you can be a member through YouTube if you don't want to do it through Patreon. So that's another way to support the show. I want to remind you guys we have some links, not only for our guests, but our hosts, and anything that we're talking about today. You'll find links in the description below. If they're not there now, it's because we haven't talked about it. If we do talk about it, I'll find the link and I'll put in the link in the description. So appreciate it. I want to say thank you to all of the moderators in the chat for keeping it clean. Thank you so much. All right, let's do this, shall we? Let's bring in our co-host, of course, Ms. Jane Kyle, Ms. Rather Be Squidding. How you guys doing?
Good to be here.
Yeah, we missed you on Monday, Jane.
I missed you guys too. It's weird. I have a pattern to my life now, Mondays and Wednesdays. So it's weird when I can't talk about UFOs with you guys. So
it definitely bums me out. That's for sure. Okay, so you were gonna say you're excited to talk to Melinda Leslie?
Yeah, because I wasn't part of the other discussions, I think 1 or 2 you guys have had with her. So I listened to them talk. So I'm just happy to be a part of this one.
Yeah, no, this will be fun. I mean, every time she's here, she's packed with info. So before we get to that, though, you said you wanted to do an unboxing. You got something at your P.O. box.
Yeah, I
sent you something.
A little envelope from the Sparky Lady, I believe. Should we see what's in here?
Let's see what's in there.
All right.
Let's see. All right. For the audience out there, he's opening for everyone listening to the podcast.
A box within a box.
Box within a box. Open up a yellow envelope.
Cigar-shaped box.
Oh, wow! Hey, nice.
What do we got there, Rather?
Yeah, squid. Let's see. Can we get this focused?
Let's see if we can focus it up. Oh, okay. All right.
A nice squid. I don't know what you call this, but I think it probably goes on my tie.
Yeah, it's a tie clip.
There
wow! Oh, there it is. Cool, Rather.
Thank you, Sparky Lady. I really appreciate this.
Yeah. All right. Well, put it on, Rather.
Yeah.
Let's see what she looks like. It's supposed to clip to the shirt, so that it doesn't flip flap all over the place.
Not used to wearing ties outside of this context, so I might be a little inexperienced with this stuff. But yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Awesome. Looks good, Rather.
Thank you, Sparky Lady.
Very awesome, Sparky Lady. Thank you so damn much. Wow. Does it say where the Does it give you any information as far as where the pin is made? Just in case anybody likes it, they go check it out.
Yeah, I believe there's an Etsy thing. I got a little card here. Let's see if there's any more information.
Oh yeah, what does the card say?
Dear Rather, I couldn't find a tie that was good enough. We got you this instead. Best to you, the Sparky Lady from Tacoma. I'm not sure where it is. Maybe if the Sparky Lady could put the Etsy store in the chat, that would be awesome.
That would be cool.
Whoever made this deserves lots of props, and thank you, Sparky Lady.
Nice. Yeah, I guess I know now what to get Rather for whenever your birthday is. What month is your birthday in?
I'm a May baby.
A May baby. Okay. All right. Well, let us know, and maybe we'll send you some ties to go along with the clip. Because people have been saying you need a new tie.
I know. This is my one tie, my one shirt. But now it looks a whole lot better, though.
But do you know where that tie, where you got that tie? Like, could you buy a bunch more in the same pattern, or have you already done that? Basically?
My local Target. I could maybe I should stock up in case I spill some mustard on this.
Yeah, get like 10.
Well, it's beautiful. McEwen says rather thoughtful, and I think it is.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you, Sparky Lady. Thank you for unboxing that with us. That was very cool. Thank you for getting it. She says, glad you liked it, Rather.
Very much.
Loves it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get some new ties and a shirt with it. We're gonna have to work on that, but this is the first step toward change, guys. So it's very exciting. Rather's very excited for this. All right, so let's bring in our guest, who's gonna break down My Lab's abductions. She's got a UFO tour. Melinda Leslie, how are you, my lady?
Very good. Thank you so much, you guys, for having me back. I looked forward to covering this subject with you guys because I knew it would be fun.
Yeah, well, I always love talking to you because you have a good spirit about this. We could always,
thank you so much.
Go ahead.
I love the show. I love the show, and when you just said a good spirit about this, I think you guys have a good spirit about the subject overall and the way you do the show. So I'm happy to be on here doing it with you. I'm very honored.
Well, hey, I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, the thing that I love about you the most is you'll give us the information. And sometimes, I mean, just being straight up, and we've been like this before, it's like sometimes the information is hard to swallow, and it's
Yes.
difficult for us to sort of be like, okay, this is either reality or at least someone's version of a reality. And so it's
right.
In some cases it's difficult. But I was going to say, I'm looking for a specific comment from someone that hasn't been here in a while, and I was really happy to see her face in here, but I wanted to pull it up. But okay, so I guess I'll look for that comment, and I'll leave the floor open to Melinda Leslie. We'll ask questions as you're going, but I'm just not sure where you wanted to start today. I think last time you were here, we stopped around slide 8 or 9 in your PowerPoint presentation.
Well, we were just doing evidence for MILABs, and I'm sorry, said that wrong. Evidence for alien abduction, and this time I decided, and when we talked, when you and I were working it out online, is just to do kind of an intro into my MILABs research, as opposed to trying to do the evidence for alien abduction. So this wasn't like a continuation of before. This was like, let's get into MILABs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the layman, if you could break down what MILABs, and I've been pronouncing it My Lab, so I'm glad that you corrected that.
Yeah,
but if you can't break it, what is MILABs?
Yeah, either way of saying it's correct. There's no absolute on this. It's MIL for military and AB for abductions. And it's specifically, and this might sound and everything okay. I realize we didn't really get to do a sound check or anything beforehand.
No, you sound good.
Am I sounding good?
You sound
good?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay.
There
I
she
realize
is.
we didn't get
Linda
to do
Thompson.
I'm
sorry, that was the name I was looking for. Linda Thompson hasn't been here a while. And I know she's a fan of yours because I'm here for Melinda. Well, I'm glad you're here either way, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
So just
I'm great. I think I got a few friends out there probably hanging out in the chat and whatnot. I knew a couple people who said they'd be watching, more than a few. So anyway, so MILABs, MIL for military and AB for abduction. And now there's a lot of incorrect information out there about it. And I don't know how much you want me.
Uh-oh.
No.
She's frozen.
Yeah, the internet might not be the best over there, or else there's some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you guys. It glitched. It glitched,
Okay.
and I lost you for a moment. I don't know what's
No
going on.
problem.
I'm at
Okay.
my office at the Center for New Age. Hopefully that's not an issue. Usually this late in the day,
Yeah.
I'm the only one on it. So, okay. So
Yeah.
going back
Okay.
to, am I
Cool.
military? AB for abduction. And it means people who are extraterrestrial abductees get targeted by covert human agencies because of their extraterrestrial experiences. And I've worked with hundreds of people that have had this happen. When I say work with them, I'm not a therapist or a hypnotherapist. I'm just a researcher and investigator. But that means I've interviewed them extensively and probably got copies of their evidence and or got to examine their evidence, and as well as I've had the experiences myself, which is what started me in investigating it. I found out in 1989 that was kind of the beginning of my whole discovery process of learning I was an experiencer, alien abductee, and that I had that happen my whole life. Oh, you guys are freezing up. You can hear me okay? Good. Okay. So very good. Thanks, rather. And so that's what it was, the beginning of, like I said, the whole investigation process for me, learning that I had had these experiences my whole life. And then all of a sudden in 1993, things changed and took a new course when I suddenly realized I was having harassment, surveillance experiences, and then had an abduction at the hand of humans. Now I want to correct something really quick, and then I promised myself that I wouldn't give really long explanations if I could help it, because this is, these are complicated subjects, and I admit that they take a lot to explain. So I apologize in advance to everyone listening and everyone in the chat, that some of the answers are long. It's just the way it has to work because it requires an explanation so that you folks, or at least I feel like you guys might be getting it, So, but going back to, there's a huge, when you look up the definition of MILABs on the internet and WikiLeaks or whatever, it kind of gives a statement that I think the source for is probably Dr. Stephen Greer is probably the source. I'll get into that later. But I'll say it's incorrect, because MILABs all along meant, just a quick background thing, abductee Kay Wilson, Katarina Wilson, and in a moment I can grab her book. I got it over here. She wrote Alien, Jigsaw. She worked with Bud Hopkins. She's a well-known abductee. Hi again, Linda. So she at one point realized she was having experiences, I want to say back in probably the 90s, having experiences at the hands of humans, not only her ET experiences, but she was having abductions where she saw humans in military garb and stuff present, and having harassment and surveillance stuff. And so as she realized this, and also worked with other abductees that were having that happen, she said, God, it's like we're not only being abducted by the aliens, we're also being abducted by the military, And so she coined the term MILAB, or military abduction, okay? And then Helmut Lammer and his wife Marion, Austrian researchers, wrote a book called MILABs, and again, I have that here, in the office, so in a moment I could probably grab them. They kind of asked Kay Wilson if they could use the title, for their book. And then when they wrote a book about it in the research, it was actually a chapter about me in that book. So because he had heard of me through Kay and maybe some other researchers, and and possibly at the time Carla Turner, because she was still around, and contacted me, and that led to him interviewing me, which led to my having a chapter in his book. So, but I give the credit to Kay Wilson for coming up with the term. And you guys, it's never meant, and this is the thing I want to put to bed right here and now. And if we get comments later in the chat, I'll say it again, because people come in, come and go out of the presentation, obviously, out of the interview. But this is the thing. It's never, ever meant to be fake alien abductions being perpetrated by the military, by the government. No. Okay. And there are very few people out there who are espousing that in any way. And they don't know. They haven't worked with hundreds of people like I have. It is, in my research anyway, so I will own this as far as this is the parameters for my research, people who've had very real alien experiences, extraterrestrial experiences, then, and they can be abductees and contactees, so whatever version of that you want to call yourself, and they will get harassment, surveillance, monitoring, be befriended by insiders quite often, and then can sometimes even, it can escalate to the point where you get picked up, or like I said, abducted at the hands of covert humans, which can be military and or intelligence personnel. And they're following up to see what the ETs are doing with you. It's more complicated than that. I'll get more into it as we go. But it is never in my research meant in lieu of alien abductions or fake alien abductions. In fact, with all the hundreds of people I've worked with and my familiarity with other cases out there and other researchers doing this, and I used to work with the late Bud Hopkins and John Mack and John Carpenter and all these people, and Leo Sprinkle, who's no longer with us, just passed. None of them, to my knowledge, in my conversations with them and my sharing research with them, was there ever a fake alien abduction experience. I haven't come across it. Now
from
I don't
the military.
know.
You're speaking from the military kidnapping somebody, faking an alien abduction.
Yeah.
And then pumping them with this idea. So that has never happened in the history.
Well, I can't say it's never happened. It's never come up in my research. It's never come up in all the research I shared with those other researchers. So I've never had it come up. If it exists, it's new to me. It hasn't come up in my research. But I think that quote on WikiLeaks and whatnot comes from Dr. Stephen Greer, who has, I've heard him say in some presentations and etc. that
But what about like abductions? Like, because I know you've acknowledged, right, there's like the humanoid beings. What about any of those?
Well, that's different. That's
hard
okay.
To know if that was
in alien abductions, people see a lot of different types of beings, including the ones referred to as Nordics. That's been the long-term catchphrase for that, meaning you're seeing something human. And you can see other abductees, because it's very common that there's mass abductions of multiple people taken together. And sometimes you're taken together from the same location, and sometimes from other locations. But a lot of research has been done, and there are many well-known cases where those people then learn later that they were abducted with these other people.
I guess the reason I ask is because I've covered cases, or just looking into a case, where somebody saw a flying saucer craft and what looked like men, but in strange clothing.
Yeah, there are human-looking ETs. That was my point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are human-looking ETs, and in abductions, many different types of beings are seen. So it's really common. It's a good question, and I'm glad you brought up for clarity, because a lot of people might, get confused, particularly if they're really new to this. Okay. And I understand that. That's why I realized coming on this show, it's like I'll go advance when I can, and I'll dial it back when I have to, no problem. But I realized, so that it's actually a really good point to bring up. Yes, there are human looking ETs. The ones referred to as Nordics, which initially were often referred to as Nordic-looking people, but that's changed over time. So now hair color, body shape, size doesn't matter. And then you can also see other abductees, whether you were taken with them or taken from separate locations, but on board the same craft together. So it's really common, to have all those things. So yes, you can see other humans, and you can see human-looking ETs, absolutely.
And so is there something about like how do you rule out when you're talking about these human abductions? What is it about those human-like ETs? Is it just, well, it's a crazy craft and it's a crazy encounter?
Well, I'm talking about if you're okay, there's a variety of things. Another good question.
Yeah.
And I know it's complicated because there's a variety of types of things that can happen. First off, okay, it can start off with low-grade harassment and surveillance. So you can have monitoring stuff going on your phones. This where it shows a covert human interest in your experiences. So let's say you're an abductee and you start having weird phone calls, phone interruptions, people calling you, maybe warning you over the phone. And then it can be things like being watched and being followed, having your home under surveillance. That's very common. Seeing black vans parked outside your home, parked in your driveway, people filming your home, this kind of thing. And then so all sorts of what I call surveillance kind of things. And then harassing things like the phone calls and even the vans. And then there's the black helicopters. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. These unmarked, matte black helicopters, no markings on them, hovering over your property. And, just passing by you, you guys don't anyone think, oh, that's surveillance. No. But if they're hovering right over your roof and circling, which I've had a couple times, quoting a neighbor of mine once when I lived in Corona Del Mar, California, I had it happen so many times. And one time there was a guy in a harness leaning out the side doors of the helicopter, like a big, kind of an old fashioned one, like, a Huey or something. Okay. Open doors on the side. He's leaning out in a harness with a telephoto lens, photographing me and my house. And my neighbor witnessed it. My neighbor's like, what the hell? And they kept circling. And it was late in the afternoon. The sun was kind of setting behind him. It was a very, kind of dramatic image, but they were circling. And I'm going to quote my neighbor who came out and, witnesses. She said, God, it's like we live in LA and we have helicopters trying to land on our roof all the time. Well, in Corona Del Mar, there's, they're not, like police helicopters and whatever can't go
it's
below
not Los Angeles.
feet. Yeah, it's not LA. It's the coastal Southern California beach community. So that to have them hovering right over your home. And I'm quoting my neighbor. She said, it's like we live in LA and helicopters are always trying to land on our roof. Because when I lived there, I was having it quite often. So, and other, again, I've worked with hundreds of people and it's well established in the abduction research. It's known by all the major abduction research organizations that they have cases of this. Et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole MUFON questionnaire that Kathleen Martin implemented when she was with them just on this subject matter. If you're talking to the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, ERT team, the Experiencer Response Team people, which is their branch of abduction research. But anyway, so these are all common. And then it can ramp up. In the presentation I give, I don't know if any of you guys got to see it, but I have this one slide of this curved line that shows how it can start off and then ramp up. And also abductions run in families, alien abduction. Well, it turns out the military abduction stuff can run in a family too. That it's quite common for an abductee having this happen to find out that some family member may have been involved in like everyone's family members are in the military, and particularly if you go back to the World War II generation and everything. Sure. So not just that, but like if they're involved in military intelligence or other branches of the intelligence community, if they're in high level aerospace development, they could have secret society connections. There's a bunch of things that are patterns that come up for the abductees that this is in their family. And then they may even know that if they already know that their parents are abductees or their grandparents, then they might learn that they've had also this covert involvement, as far as harassment, surveillance, or abduction. So like I said, oops, sorry, I would move that. And it can ramp up. And so it can start off with this low grade stuff and then pick up. And like I said, you can also be befriended by insiders. And then eventually, if they have interest in you, you can then have an abduction at the hands of covert humans. Now, that's also confusing. So getting more to your question. See, I said I wouldn't do these long answers, but oops.
Have you ever?
Really interesting.
I love it. I love
it. But,
I can listen to you all day, Melinda.
You're being nice, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Seriously, I could.
Okay, thank you. So So the other thing is, then it can ramp up like you have an abduction at the hands of military. And it can have nothing to do with ETs. You can just have a complete experience with covert humans, either, like I said, military personnel or intelligence. They don't always have uniforms on. Sometimes there's lab coats. Sometimes there's guys in suits. Sometimes it's plain clothes. Sometimes it's military uniforms. Okay, but you can have that. Then you can have a fully alien abduction for the most part, but see military humans present, which probably more gets to answering your question there, is like you can see guys in uniform, guys in lab coats, etc. But they stand out because they're clearly not the ETs, and then you can also have what I call handoff experience. You can be picked up by humans, have an experience with them, and then see aliens present. So in other words, it can be, for all intents and purposes, a completely human experience where you're seeing different ET types present in the environment in different ways. And you can be handed over to ETs, or you can be taken from your previous environment, whether it's home, hotel, car, whatever it is. Abductions happen from everywhere. And then you can be handed over to covert humans. I've had all those combinations. Now, not everyone does. I just happen to have investigated my own experiences. I have a lot of conscious memory.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. You said that you go from this light surveillance to, you said, like, it ramps up, right? And then you get insider friends, and then...
And not everyone. Some people...
Not everyone.
Yeah,
right.
You
but
can start
I guess
off with low grade stuff and not have anything else happen. It's just, I think it depends if they have a lot of interest in you, and they need you, or find you of interest for whatever reason.
That's my question.
I'll get into that later.
What is that interest? What separates, say, Melinda Leslie from the person who where that sort of communication dribbles out? Do you think it's the interest in sort of the looking into it that sparked? Okay,
that's a good question.
Okay.
Originally in my research, I thought, well, they're looking for people that have been out there talking about, or have gone public, have done a interview, a podcast, a radio thing, or TV, and I thought they got to be, because it seemed initially to me that I was hearing this from the cases that had already kind of gone public. And I said, okay, but then I realized I started to have cases of people who had not gone public at all. And maybe their family weren't even aware of this part, and they're having this covert interest, harassment, surveillance, monitoring, being watched, followed, black helicopters, snail mail tampered with, emails tampered with. They go into your computer and surgically remove files. I mean, I have lots of this in all my cases. And it's like, so people were having stuff happen, and then maybe worked up to the point where they got abducted at the hands of the military, but they'd never gone public. They'd never done an interview. They hadn't even told anyone they're having alien abduction experiences. And then you go, well, how would they know? And then I realized there was a couple things that started to make me realize. For instance, one was researcher Ron Regehr talking about the DSP spy satellite, and that it was tracking craft. This was back in the 80s or 90s, tracking, and he worked on it, so he was part of the team. And when he retired, I guess he went public with some information that he could. So, all along there's been whistleblowers. That's not a new thing in the field. I'm sure you guys are well aware, And so he talked about and wrote an article for the MUFON Journal about the DSP spy satellite tracking UFOs coming and going from places. And I thought, oh, if there's one, or if that's a couple of satellites that are in that category, what do you bet they have satellites up just to track this stuff? And that realization, and if anything, as information has gone on further in the field that I've been in it 32 years now, is just keeps proving that is more than likely, the NRO, et cetera, So they're tracking stuff coming and going much better, I think. Now, when I say they, I'm not saying all the military, all the government, or whatever, even any branch of the military, but some covert group that is managing this subject matter seems to be tracking UFOs. I think they know when they come and go from a particular location, particularly if that happens repeatedly. And we already said abductions run in families. So what if they're already monitoring your family to see who might else have an abduction? And then, monitoring your phone, if you're talking about on the phone at all, they could monitor those calls looking for search words. I mean, that's well understood. The government's had that ability for a long, long time, echelon and all that stuff, So what they're looking for search words. And what if they're then going, okay, we're following these families already. Like my dad was involved in some covert stuff, not regarding this, but aerospace stuff. And I had a grandfather involved in some covert things, long story short. So I'm like, okay, what if they're following these families anyways to see who has the abductee kids? So this may go back further. Regardless, it almost becomes a moot issue because there could be many reasons why you're flagged as someone they initially have interest in. And then why do some people have low-grade stuff and then it stops? Well, I think that speaks to things they may be looking for, they being the covert world. There may be certain types of abilities they're looking for, certain ways of processing information, certain types of abduction experiences, because, for instance, the FREE organization, FREEE, which was the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Experiences, which has now changed its name and headed up by Ray Hernandez. But in their questionnaire of over 4,000 people, they had some questions regarding this. Now, I've talked to him and his board extensively in the past about this, and I thought they kind of asked the wrong questions, but they still came up with 12% of abductees were having this. But they literally, 12% were having abductions by the military. If they got into the harassment and surveillance questions, that number, I'm confident would go up to like 40%. With the amount of abductees that I've talked to and the amount of people having the harassment, surveillance, monitoring, being befriended by insiders, etc., let alone what I call re-abduction, which is then the abduction part of it, we're talking a lot of people. And so is it all abductees? No, but I think a conservative number is 40%.
Well, if this is all true, it's obviously a very illegal operation that's going on, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
so and it seems like it's a human operation, so there should be evidence, right? Like I guess my question is, have you like collected pictures of these Black Hawk helicopters and the government harassment, and have you gone to the FBI and to the authorities with it?
Yeah, when I was having it happen myself, I had gone to investigate it. When I was renting a room from someone, long story short, in Southern California in what was, I guess that was the Fountain Valley area. Anyways, but when I was doing that, I went to the local police and they said, and etc. But I learned that they didn't have their own helicopter unit. They used Huntington Beach's. Okay, so I went to the Huntington Beach unit, talked to the head guy with the helicopter unit, and of course he said, I believe you, very interesting, call us when it's actually happening and we'll send up a bird, we'll send one up to check it out, because whoever that is hovering that low over your roof and circling over your neighborhood is breaking the law. And so in that case, now it didn't happen again where I could have called him right then. Maybe it happened once at that location after that, but whatever, it wasn't time that would have been right to call. It's a long story, and then it happened in other locations where I haven't checked out who to call. But in that case, he was very interesting. He said, yeah, whoever it's doing is clearly breaking the law. But yeah, in answering your question there, rather, there is extensive photographic evidence, video evidence of these helicopters. I mean, I have a lot from my cases, and it's out there in the research community. I do a presentation if people want to see that stuff.
Well, what about the kidnappings, the abductions? Have you collected evidence and gone to the the FBI with that? And what have they said about that?
First off, you say this person's an alien abductee, and first off,
well, maybe just say I was kidnapped, right? Because this isn't
but they're
really
going to say
alien.
under what circumstances and whatever. No, first off, most abductees don't want to put themselves out there for ridicule, and they're this is a very private thing that happens. They don't share it with people. They have to extremely trust a researcher to share it with them. There've
Well,
been
sure, but this
very
isn't an
few
alien abduction. This is the government coming in.
But because
you
you're
know,
having alien abductions, when they say what happened and you say, I was taken to an underground military base and there were guys in uniforms and lab coats and all these different personnel and vehicles and all this stuff and ETs present, you just lost whoever that investigator researcher is, didn't you? If
well,
they're like
if you have
mainstream,
evidence, like you
FBI.
say, I'd say that
Yeah,
they would probably consider that, right?
Okay. I did want to pursue something where a friend of mine and I were taken from her house and they busted in the door and there was extensive damage to the door and the door frame. And yet we had the records and evidence that just like a month before that, her landlord had redone the locks, the weather stripping, painted the door frames. It had all been changed up to have new weather stripping and everything. So we knew that that was new. And so when we were taken that night, they broke in the front door when they removed us and they did all this extensive damage. And we have lots of photos of all that. And it's real obvious. I mean, to the locks, to the lock, both, there's a regular door lock, a deadbolt, the door frame, it all had extensive damage to it. I wanted to go to the police, but I was at my friend's house staying with her when this happened to both of us. It was her place. She said no. She said, I don't want to go to the police. She was freaked out. She was already having, it's a long story. She was already having threats to her life by a guy who was like a stalker. It's a long story, but she was having stuff happen regarding her experiences already. And she said, I don't want to make it worse. So she didn't want to go to the police.
She was having stalker issues, but was she having the same kind of experience?
Related to this subject, yeah.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to see both of you were having experiences.
Yes. Okay. And so she was already in MILAB case too. And so when we had this happen together, we weren't necessarily surprised, but there was a tremendous amount of physical evidence. I had also, when they were removing me out of the place, she had a glass top coffee table. I tripped over it and it broke, and other things. And the neighbor downstairs later ended up admitting that he thought the bookcase had fallen over in the living room because there was this series of loud thumps. No, it was me and me tripping over the coffee table and falling because they had drugged me and I lost control of my body. So when I landed really hard. And the damage to the door and everything. So all that stuff. And I said, let's call the police. We can clearly say, we don't have to say ETs or anything. We'll just show them evidence and get a police report that the place was broken into. And she said, no, I don't want to bring on any more of this. She was frightened, as many of these people are. And so she said no. But we did know a private investigator that someone with a history of doing that we happen to know. And so he came and looked at it and he said this was done by pros. The way this is broken into, even though there's damage, we had the door lock and the deadbolt, and with the new trim and weather stripping, he said someone had to come in with a crowbar, like a flat metal surface, go in the wood, stick it in there and pull the wood out. And that's how they got in, is literally the wood door frame had been pulled apart. And then they were able to bust in the door.
Had anything been stolen, or was it just an intimidation thing?
No, they took us. No, they removed us and we were taken, interrogated in an underground base. Yeah. I mean, we remember that whole experience. We had all sorts of bits and pieces of conscious memory. By the way, I tend to remember about 80% of my experiences consciously. I admit I've had some regressive hypnosis, but not for a whole experience, just to fill in like the details, like how did I get from here to there and that kind of thing.
Okay, wait, just real quick. Because I want to take a time out. I just want to stop here for a second because I can see Rather's face. And I want to just breathe here for a second and sort of get the idea. Let's just propose or let's just propose that this is real. This actually happened. How? I'm asking you, rather. Wait. Hold on. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me just say this, because I'm trying to do a thought experiment here, right? Like, how would you report being kidnapped by your own government to a sheriff, a local police officer, and or even the FBI? Like, how could you if that's what you believe is true, is really happening, let's say you got pictures of helicopters, you got pictures of this deadbolt being broken into, there are things that you could show, maybe even marks on your body, because obviously, right, they had to at some point forcibly handle you. So I'm assuming there's also
lots of
all right,
bruises
and maybe while I'm asking this question, Melinda, if you could maybe grab whatever pictures you have, if there is anything at arm's length, that'd be great. If not, don't worry about it. But I figured, because somebody was asking here, ask us to show her the photos of the helicopter. So if you got anything like that, that'd be cool. But I am curious, rather, like, how would you, as just somebody who might be experiencing something like this, how would you approach that? How would you report that?
Yeah,
without sounding like you lost your marbles.
I just say that,
exactly.
people broke into my house and kidnapped me, right? Like, I don't think that, Melinda, you probably don't know for certain that they're the government. There's some weird organization. I would, go to the FBI, go to the police with all the documentation of the Black Hawk helicopters. And
what were you saying, Melinda?
Go ahead, sir.
Rather, it's a valid question, but in that case, we know where we were taken. It was Miramar Naval Air Base, and we did a lot of research that we were taken to a kind of a quiet area of Miramar and taken to an underground installation there, or at least to a building that had some levels underground.
Well, I mean, that'd be amazing information to give the police then, right? Because that would be, if you could describe that facility, and if you could just describe that facility to the police or to the FBI, and it was, checks out, that kind of verifies the story, right?
It was Miramar Naval Air Base, and they're going to ask the Navy, and the Navy's going to say that this person's crazy. I mean, you understand that there's no one you can go to with this. Who are you going to go to that's going to believe you? Lou got it absolutely. Who are you going to go to that's going to believe you?
Well, it is a challenge, right? Because it is a hard,
which is why I wanted to go to the police, because we had evidence of break-in, but it wasn't my home. So my friend said, no, I don't want to risk causing more of this. I already have so much going on. And I had to, respect her wishes. It was her home.
But you're saying that this happens kind of all the time too.
I had another event happens all the time. Where I was taken with a family. They did not want to pursue investigating it, and because it's their home, I had to respect them. If I had a lot of evidence to my own environment without someone there, I would go to the police with it if I had evidence of break-in or anything. Unfortunately, when that's happened, I've been with other people. Now, it's also happened to me, but not where they left evidence of that kind. Unfortunately, because if I did, but all I would have is a police report saying my home is broken into. There'd be no way to prove who did it. Well, okay, even if they did an investigation, they may not find who did it.
Let me play devil's advocate here a little bit for Rather side. Now, if as Melinda Leslie, if you've got pictures of helicopters swarming around your house, you've got an eyewitness in your neighbor who can confirm that with you, right? This is at your house. And I'm assuming at your house also, at some point, you were either taken by the entities themselves or by this MyLab research entities, correct? Okay, so there was no signs of break-in. But again, if you had bruises on your body, and you have eyewitnesses and you have helicopters, right? I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you could take that information to either a local police department or the FBI and say, look, this is what I'm experiencing without the underground bases, without being taken to military bases. Be like, I feel like somebody's coming in my home, kidnapping me. Here are the pictures of the bruises that I'm getting. Here's the eyewitness testimony from my neighbor of helicopters coming around the house. What can I do as a citizen to stop this?
You know what? And my friend, okay, the same person I'm talking about, had a major stalker event. The guy was showing up where she worked and threatening her life. Okay. And so she had witnesses where she worked. She had witnesses of him, to him following her. She had photographed him in his car, even a license plate. Turned out it was a government plate. Turned out the police looked into it, and we said, and ended up getting back to her. She had a full investigation done, and ended up, because it kept going on, she was able to have a restraining order. And in this case, they were like, we cannot find, well, I take that back. In that case, they found who this guy was, and he
And there
had
was a restraining order put on him?
He had a restraining order put on him, and he had a background of working for the government or whatever, but there was no connection to anything else. It was just, all the police could say is this guy did have a little bit of a criminal record. He had worked for the government and all this stuff, but other than that, they couldn't prove anything else. So, and most abductees don't want to pursue it because they think it's going to make it increase and get worse. I'll tell you this, all alien abductees who have this happen, even though some of their extraterrestrial experiences could be traumatic, and then not doesn't mean the experience was bad, but their reaction to it is traumatic. But even though they have traumatic experiences, all of them 100%, as soon as I interview anyone with these experiences, I don't even have to ask. Everyone brings up right away, these experiences are a lot worse than the ET ones. Because we're talking humans, you expect to treat you or act in a certain way. And when you get beat up, you know, or roughed up, you're asking, do I have pictures of bruises? Yeah, me in a lot of my cases. Yeah, of my cases, of me. I mean, I have a case, you guys. This gentleman, I've lost contact with him now, but I have all the notes and a recording from my original interview with him. A sheriff, the head sheriff for 2 counties in Northern California, like 2 big counties have one sheriff's unit. He is the top guy. He's an alien abductee. He's had a bunch of this stuff start to happen. His brother was visiting him, staying at his place one weekend. The brother hears noise in the hallway and is in the living room watching TV, gets up to go look. The guy who owns the house had gone in to take a shower because I think they were going to go to dinner or something. So he's in the shower. He comes out of the shower with the towel wrapped around him. There's a guy in military, like, I guess camouflage or whatever, in the hallway. He tossles with the guy. This guy's a sheriff. He's buff. You know, he tossles with the guy. The brother who's watching TV hears all this, comes around the corner, witnesses it. Next thing you know, the guy who owned the house comes to, sprawled out on his king size bed like this, sprawled out without any clothes on, like he's waking up from being drugged. And they do remember that the guy put something over their nose or something in the hallway. The other gentleman, his brother, actually, I take that back. I had that reversed. The brother wakes up on the king-size bed like this. All of a sudden, there's pounding on the slide glass door in the patio. He goes to look. The doors are all locked and everything. It's his brother. And this is later. So this is later because he can't find his brain. He wakes up. He looks around. He says, oh, my God, I saw the guy in the hallway. Okay. I tousled with him. I obviously was drugged. I can't find my brother. And so he goes looking for him. Later, I come to think of it, I think it's an hour or two later, there's knocking on the sliding glass door. And he goes, and there's his brother without any clothes on, standing on the patio, trying to knock and get in, like they left him outside. And he lets him in, and the guy's been gone for hours. The brother witnessed it. You know, they go to the hallway because the brother remembered the guy in military anyways, at the beginning of the incident, when he came around the corner as his brother's coming out of the bathroom or whatever, the military guy leaned up against the wall and put his foot up on the wall. And they said, I wonder if you can tell. And sure enough, there was a boot print on the wall, and they took a bunch of photos of it. And they even took a ruler to show how high up it was and how big it was, and took photos of the ruler next to. So you clearly have the boot print. And this was the sheriff of 2 major counties in Northern California that this happened to. And his brother witnessed him being taken. Now, the brother was drugged and apparently just left on the bed until he woke up. But the other guy was removed and shows up hours later in the patio without any clothes on. I have other accounts like this. But there you go. So, and that's a sheriff. Now, he's not going to go and do anything about it. Yeah, someone refers him to me. I think it was Bud Hopkins, actually, refers him to me. And I talked to this guy, and he's an alien abductee, and he had this whole experience and had others, but he had the evidence for this. And in that experience, that same experience, He eventually remembered a bunch and probably got some regressive hypnosis as well. He fought with one of the guards in the experience and got in an argument, and he told the guard off. The military guard left the room. There's a bunch of people questioning him, examining him, whatever. They left this room. The guard he told off, who had been very rude to him, came back in the room, punched him in the groin, and the guy developed a hernia from it. And I have a copy of the medical report and the x-ray pictures of the hernia, medical report, x-ray pictures, hernia, and the photos of the boot on the wall in his home.
How often do you think this happens, per year or so?
Well, there's no way to know because, I only know the cases that come to me. If they go to another researcher.
How many cases were you getting a year?
I don't have a per year number. All I know
like hundreds,
is,
thousands.
No,
do you have any kind of gut feel?
Hang on. No, there's no way. Well, I'll tell you this. Okay, based upon the questionnaire from Free and the work of MUFON and their questions about this, but again, in both cases, they weren't asking just the harassment surveillance questions. That's going to send the number way up. But they actually were asking questions specifically about abducted by the military, and they come with in both cases, MUFON and Free came up with 12 to 15% of all abductees. Well, you guys, there's a Roper poll done where Bigelow paid for major abduction research organizations to have questions tacked on to the Roper poll, to the Roper organization, and the Roper organization came back and said 3,700,000 people were having abductions. And it wasn't, are you an abductee? That was never the question. There were 10 key indicator questions so unique to the experience. You could answer yes to one of them and not be counted, but they only counted the results of people who answered yes to all of them. Roper organization came back and said the number of people answering yes to all of them was 3.7 million people in the continental U.S. alone. So what's 12 or 15% of 3.7 million?
Yeah.
And that'll give you your number.
So that's fascinating. That leads me to my next question, which is, so it sounds like in that story that you just described, it was almost unsuccessful, right? They had a scuffle with the sheriff and the abductor. How could thousands of these be happening a year? Tens of thousands, maybe even millions.
Well, they're usually
and none were unsuccessful. No one had a gun and was able to shoot the guy or stop it.
Well, depending on when it's happening in the situation, there are a few situations where maybe someone pulled a gun or something, but for the most part, they're waking you up in your sleep. I mean, I was taken with a group of people from a hotel. Okay. And I wasn't the only, I've been in some what are called mass MILABs, where a group of people are taken together. Myself and two friends, myself and five of us together, myself and four friends from a conference where it was about 12 or I think about 15 people from that conference, and another mass MILAB where I was taken with a group of people, but we were taken to an underground base where there was a hallway with like 100 people lined up down it. And I later met someone else from that experience. A guy came on my tour here in town and wanted to meet with me privately later. He was a grown man in his 30s, early 40s. And he said his mom was there with him on the tour. And they said, we want to meet with you tomorrow because we have had alien abduction stuff. And so I met with them the next day in my office, and they're telling me all about how they both used to live in Sedona and they had a lot of alien abduction stuff. At one point, the mom gets up to use the restroom. She, older lady, gets up and uses the restroom. The son stays there and says, can I take you to lunch tomorrow? There's more I want to talk about, but without my mom present, because this is very private. He takes me to lunch the next day and proceeds to open up about 3 major military abduction accounts he had had while living in Sedona. And one of those, he knew the date and when it happened, or he knew approximately. He said it was mid-November 2011. Well, our experience was November 15th, 2011. He goes, mid-November, I'm living with my girlfriend. She witnessed them in my apartment, so she witnesses some of it. Drugs her and knocks her out, takes him. And then he has this whole thing, and he's saying, have you ever heard anything like this? Or have you ever heard this from anyone else? Because there are like 100 people lined up down the hallway. And he goes into the details of what happened in this underground base. Myself and my 4 friends who were taken there together, it was and he told me this 2 years after our experience. So this is 2 years later, he's telling me this, and he shares the identical same experience. it matches ours, and with unique details. And I had never been public or said anything about that, and particularly those kind of details. And he knew the date and everything. And so when I saw 100 people lined up down that hallway, he was one of them. There were other abductees taken from the area, their surrounding area, but he was one of them.
Jane, do you have a hold on? Wait a second, Jane. Do you have any questions?
Well, yeah. So to the awaiting aliens comment about hotels having surveillance cameras. So I know there's a few infamous, famous photos of the so-called Men in Black, and there's definitely purported encounters. Roswell era of military or not knowing really who their employer is, I guess, is really their title. So there's these encounters with the Men in Black. Is this connected to that? Are these updated tactics? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, some abductees have classic, especially way back in history. Some abductees had classic Men in Black experiences. It seemed like you were just saying, maybe something's been updated, because those have died down even in the UFO research field. Now, occasionally they look pasty white and have a hat on, and sometimes that still happens. But usually it's more like you're going to have guys in suits knock on your door and take your footage or threaten you. And that's just again, it's tapering off, but it continues to happen. Even people who have really good physical evidence of sightings or landed or, crash. Like if you have an artifact from a crash retrieval, from a landed craft, anything like that, these guys show up and remove it. Now, I have had abductees have their places broken into even when they're not there and have stuff removed, but the only things taken are things regarding their experience or regarding their abductions. I was working with the late Dr. Deborah Troncalli, a psychotherapist that I work with, about my own experiences for years. On at least 2 occasions, her office was broken into and some of the abductee files were taken, nothing else. And she had a regular psychotherapy business and saw people about everything under the sun, and she was had a specialty of working with children and all this stuff. When both times her office was broken into, the only things that were removed were the abductee stuff. And with that, not even all of it. It seemed like they were looking for certain cases.
Melinda,
and that happened twice.
Have you heard about, I'll send you this article later if you hadn't, but had you heard about 2016? I remember covering in Iowa, there were like a string of encounters with Men in Black, and it was actually being investigated. And it's coming to mind as we talk about it here.
Those accounts still happen. I think they happen less, and it seems to be less the pasty white guys in the hats. It seems to be more like just guys in suits or plainclothes guys. But those things still happen, and government agents show up and everything. Yeah, it still happens in some sighting cases. It seems like it seems like to be the cases that have more evidence that they tend to happen in, like they're looking for someone's physical evidence that they've got. And then as an abductee, you can be befriended by insiders. Oh my God, have I had that in spades for 32 years. I mean, with the latest one being Jim Semivan, of course. It grows. And I'm not alone. A lot of other abductees, and I'm not surprised now when I meet someone and they confide a bunch of stuff in me, or share information. Now, I think some of them are totally doing it to help me, like explaining in great detail, for instance, how compartmentalization works and how the secrecy is kept and whatnot. Like they're doing it to help me. And others, it's more like keeping track of me. Now in the case of Semivan, I see that as a very helpful thing, obviously. But I mean, I've had it all different ways, a lot, for 32 years, and so have other cases, extensively. Anyways, I know you guys, I'm giving long answers. It's just
no, that's okay. Okay, so Rather, did you have any follow-up questions to that?
Well, I'm curious why you think Semivan is an ally of yours and not potentially linked to some of this horrible
stuff.
Well,
that's a good question. Because it's still helpful to me, even if he was. How's that sound? You know, my getting information, understanding the process, I've learned, don't assume. Now, there's some abductees that would not talk to him in a million years for that reason. But other even well-known abductees in the field have learned sometimes to trust some of these individuals because you can get a lot of helpful information. Now, there's a fine line between, are they helping me and giving me information, or are they keeping tabs on me? And I decide to say, does it matter? You know, and how would I
what
ever
if they're
know?
feeding you misinformation?
Well, that's one thing, but you know, so far I have had a very pleasant and helpful relationship there. So, you know, that's for me to decide and be smart about. You don't see me constantly, you know, Semivan's not saying, oh, put this out there, you know. It's usually I've had to ask him a question. So he's obviously not using me to disseminate stuff. There's a couple times when I have asked him things and then shared that in interviews and podcasts and, you know, those panels I did with Grant Cameron and stuff like that, you know, so occasionally, you know, but all in all, it's helped me. Now, he is very interested in my MyLab stuff and in those experiences. And he says, now, you know, I may get a hand slap for even sharing this, but I'll put it out there. And if I hear from him, then, you know, I may not do it again.
If
but
anybody hand slaps you, Melinda, you come to me. And I'll
okay.
We'll be hand slapping
I'll
Melinda Leslie.
Lou, I'll stick
Lou
you on
versus the CIA.
I'll stick you on Jim Semivan. Yeah.
You back off, Semivan. I'm talking to you. Back off.
You'll probably have Elizondo show up and go, leave Jim alone.
So
That'd be pretty funny, though. I'd like to get that whole thing taped, by the way.
Oh, well, maybe we'll do it live. It'll get a ton of hits.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Lou threatens Lou live.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah, you got to laugh. You know, people get mad at me. Experiences get mad at me when I laugh at this stuff. And you got to have a sense of humor. You got to deal with it that way, because otherwise it'll, like any, you know, it'll eat you up. And there's also a certain amount of frustration, you know, rather your questions were all good. Why didn't you do this? Do I have a good enough evidence to go forward with? Would they believe me? And then they're going to say, who would be breaking into your house or whatever? You know, you're just going to say, oh, I don't know. You know, I mean, yes, I was ready to go to the police about that one, and I really wanted to, you know, but also these guys are pretty good about not leaving that much evidence. A lot of these experiences, the only evidence you have afterwards is bruises on your body and needle marks. The time in the hotel, to the hotel room doors, they took a bunch of us. Two of the people involved, there was damage to the break into their hotel room door. But the hotel, upon discovering these damaged door locks and the security locks being removed and, you know, all this stuff, they blamed it was a conference that we were attending. They blamed the conference producer and charged her. So luckily I got the evidence of, you know, her bills that, you know, she was charged by the hotel for the damage to those two doors. They said it's people attending your conference, therefore it's your responsibility. And she had to pay for the damage. But she wanted to eventually be able to do more conferences there. So she agreed to pay for the damage as if the people staying in the rooms damaged those door locks. The people staying in those rooms did not damage the door locks. The door locks were damaged when these guys broke in.
Yeah, I'm not trying to frustrate you by asking these questions, but before Lou cut you off there,
no problem. Rather, they're good and they're very legitimate. It's just really hard, you know. And in some cases, you know, you may ask me some things, so I'll go, I don't know, and I agree with you. You know, even with the questions you did ask, I agree with you. That should be done. In two cases where there was physical evidence in the environment where I was involved, unfortunately, those two times were at other people's homes, and I couldn't do anything about it. Because those people said, we don't want the attention. We don't want an investigation. You know, we want to lay low. One of them owned a major business and said, I don't want this to affect my business. You know, people are afraid. The ridicule, you guys, the ridicule factor for abductees is so bad. You know, it's so tough. It's so tough to live with these experiences. Abductees are afraid to even share it with their family, with the fear that the family will have them committed. You know, and that it doesn't matter how many witnesses, how much evidence, you know, I mean, I know an abductee who's also a MILAB, having this happen extensively, involved her whole family and her kids. Her husband is a really religious guy, has a tough time with it, and he, long story short, had kind of been abusing her. They go to get a divorce. He uses this stuff and her thinking she, being public as an abductee against her to gain custody of the kids. She did not want to bring up in court and ruin his career and his family because he had a background as a policeman, ruin his career and his family, bringing up that he had abused her. There's a record of abuse and abused the children, but she had physical evidence of it. When he went forward and said, I'm going to use that you're an abductee to get custody of the kids, and had a full psychological investigation, everything done, her lawyers said, give us something to work with, because otherwise you're losing custody of the kids and getting a psych eval. She ended up having to cough up the evidence that he had abused her and abused the children, and it got that dirty. So he was using abduction against her. Well, she won and won custody of the kids because evidence of abusing the kids was much stronger, But he actually tried to use it against her to gain custody of the kids. What if he had won that and they'd gone into the hands of an abuser? Thank God she won. So you guys, I'm just giving these as examples of how tough it can be, for abductees. And so many live in silence. They don't tell people, they don't go forward, and they're and those that, and some people are willing to suffer the slings and arrows and be out there,
Well, it kind of echoes
Travis or Kathleen Martin or whoever you're talking about,
It kind of echoes what Gary Nolan was talking about this week and with Lex Fridman, and that the idea that when they're having these conversations, and as a physicist, he's having conversations at universities and things like that, private conversations, and then this inevitably always comes up, and then somebody at the table will give a confession, and then all of a sudden there's a levity in the room where everybody's like, oh, okay, we're seriously talking about this. Or somebody will come up to him after the conversation and just say, hey, by the way, I've experienced this crazy thing, I want to talk about it. So this idea that there's safety in numbers, so the more people that are talking about, especially in that kind of setting, I think this conversation is going to start being had more. But before Rather follows up with something here, I did have one question. How many years has the military been doing this? From your
That is a good question. On the surface, I can say I don't know. I've been doing the research for 30 or close to 32 years. And so I can say it's been happening that long. I'd heard of cases previously, and I know it runs in families. There was some stuff. Whitley Strieber wrote a fictional book called Majestic about some stuff running in his family going back to the 40s. So then you go, okay, and he wrote his fictional, but he said it's loosely based on facts. But he said all this stuff goes in my family and their involvement back to the 40s, because he actually had an uncle involved loosely with the Roswell incident, and that's what he wrote about in that book. And when I read the book, I go, okay, I recognize everything in there, and of course he had to write it as fiction to be able to write it back then. But Whitley's very close to say it was loosely based on fact, and but so my point being, because it goes back in families, I think there's a lot of evidence that it goes back to the 50s and 40s and stuff like that. Now, how much more than that, I don't know. It's one of those things. There's, there was the late Carla Turner. There's me. There's a few other people. The MUFON ERT group, Experiencer Response Team, who asked questions on this. There's Kathleen Martin. There's the number of researchers that have done any extensive work, and the late Leo Sprinkle had quite a few cases, and he worked extensively with a couple of well-known abductees that were having this happen, like Leah Haley and others. Anyway, so long story short, there's a handful of researchers that have looked into this aspect, and even some of those are abduction researchers who have focused on, like the late John Mack, who shared a bunch with me, and he said, I have about 50 cases with harassment and surveillance, and he said about 15 of those people have had extensive abductions at the hands of the military. And John Mack sat down with me, and we did this with attorney Daniel Sheehan present, so he was there the whole time. And he said, what do I tell these people? That's John Mack asking me. And I said, what do you tell your alien abductees? I said, well, you're not alone. You're not crazy. There's other people, it's okay to, whatever, you can be strong, whatever. And I said, that's exactly what you tell these people,
Okay. Rather, what was your follow-up there to Jim Semivan?
Yeah, I thought you were on the verge of telling us something really interesting there. Then Lou cut you off there.
Oh, did I get sidetracked?
Yeah, you did a little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Hey, I don't, and Lou, I do it to myself, so I might have done it to myself.
Don't sweat it.
Okay, so what were we saying? Refresh my memory. I'll get into it. Okay, I know what you're saying. So Jim, yes, thank you. Okay, so Jim has had an interest, and he said, I want to come back. He's been to Sedona once to visit me. That was like 2 years ago, so it hasn't come back. But he said, I want to come back. I need some time. I said, well, can you make time for me? I said, like, what, a couple hours, a day? What? He said, no, a couple of days. He said, I want to ask you extensively about your MILAB stuff and whatever you're willing to share with me. And he said, if you don't want to share, fine, whatever you are. And I said, well, my basic research, I said, I'll share everything with you. My basic research, because most of it I've been public about and lectured and presentations. And my own experiences, I've been pretty public. So I'm like, I can share that. I'll just omit anybody's names, because any abductee I know, if I gave you their name, they'd have my head on a platter. With the exception of maybe a couple of people that have been so public about it that I'd probably be okay. That are pretty known. And he said, no, you don't have to give me any names. That's fine. He said, I just want to know the overalls of your research. And then I said, Jim, but why? And he said, he used to be involved in procuring money for some black project stuff. That's one of his times with the CIA. It was the funding and the funding of some SAPs and stuff like that. And he said, I know how the funding works for military and governmental black project stuff and, secret stuff, top secret and everything. He goes, I don't know how this is being paid for. And he said, I want to understand everything I can about the process so I can understand how this is possibly being funded, where the money is coming from. And I said, well, about USAPs. And I said, who's approving the USAPs and stuff? And he said, that's what I want to know. Are they approving some of this? What's the group of people doing this? And I mean, I think he was serious. Now, could that be a really good front for learning more about my research and how much I know? And then he's going to end up threatening me or something. But he knows, I don't think that would ever happen, because of course I'd go blah, 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 blah out in their community, And so, no, I think given his past positions, he really wants to know. I've talked to him about this repeatedly, extensively, and I think and he hasn't come here to spend those couple days with me, but my gut feeling on this is he's being legit about this. He really wants to know. He is an experiencer. He's had an abduction. He said, and then he said, now this is the one thing that you go, how did this happen? He did ask around on, through connections he has, and he claims he has a piece of evidence that he cannot give me, but he will show me when he comes, proving my involvement in a program. Now, I don't know if I'm thinking anything from like, is that a document like a bigot list showing my name being involved in something? Is it a piece of video footage of me in one of the underground bases? Is it a photo of me in a base? What does he have? I don't know. We're talking video, photo, document, but he says, I have physical evidence that will prove to you, and it was enough to prove to him that I'm absolutely involved in a program. And so he said, based upon that one thing, I'm willing to listen to everything you have to say, And I told him, I said, I may even share some stuff about my own experience that my memory is not exact, And he said, fine, share what you can, but I'm willing to at least consider it, because I know that you were involved in a program, at least at that time, that I have the evidence for. And I don't know what that is. He says, I cannot give it. Believe me, you guys, I'm really trying to get it, And he said, I can't give it to you, but I'll show it to you when I'm with you. But I'm gonna do some serious arm twisting when he's with me for that evidence.
Well, real quick, I wanna shift gears a little bit here, because we've got some love for you from the audience, and we've also got some questions as well.
Okay, thank you, audience.
So Solid with a $2 donation says, Melinda is my lab bae. So
Ah,
loves you.
thank you.
Says hello to the chat. Thank you, Solid, for the donations. Blue Sky has a question. Says most people keep or not a question, but just something that I thought was interesting. Most people keep any unusual experiences to themselves. Kind of sad if you think about it. No one wants to be labeled as nuts. I bet most humans have some kind of odd experience, and I'm sure that, like you said, they don't talk about.
Even paranormal experiences. How many people have ghost experiences? Bigfoot or
Right.
ghost or haunted or deceased loved one visiting them, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I have people. I do readings here at the center. I don't mind putting that out there. It's all over on the internet. And I do mediumship, deceased loved ones. You know how many clients come and say, my family gave me a bad time about coming and getting a mediumship ring with you. Like my family's going to give me a bad time, and they're off doing something else, and I wanted to come do this, and they went for a hike or whatever, and I just feel bad for those people that it's like, wow, you even that, like the fact that they got a reading is somehow shameful, or, gosh, and let alone they have something more intense, on last night on my tour, a gentleman at the end of the tour opened up. We'd had sightings all night, great sightings. At the end of my UFO sighting tour, he opens up. I'm trying to remember what he said, but it was like, a significant close-up sighting he had. And he says, I've never ever talked about this anywhere. So my other clients were already talking about previous sightings. They were even asking me about abductions. So we're talking about all of us having previous sightings. They're talking about my abductions. We're talking about paranormal stuff. We had incredible sightings. And yet this guy waits till the very end to say, I once had this major sighting and it was very up close. And, he gave us the details.
Safety in
said,
numbers,
I've
right?
never told anybody.
Yeah.
Wow. And I said, thank you for feeling comfortable enough with us. Well, we all did. My other clients did. Thank you, sir, for feeling comfortable enough. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And by the way, shame on me for not having had listened to that interview yet. I'm with Dr. Nolan. I'm definitely going to be listening to that.
It's amazing.
Especially knowing now too, I was going to listen anyways, but now I'm eager tonight. Tonight when I'm done with you guys, I'm going to go out to dinner, treat myself to dinner, and probably.
There you go, girl. There you go.
I was going to say, I will listen to that because I want to hear Dr. Nolan talk about that. That's fascinating.
Well, I was just about to say, how do I just got done threatening Jim Semivan right into the camera. Like, don't you dare slap Melinda Leslie's hand. But what do I do when Melinda Leslie slaps her own hand? You got me in a quandary here. Solid, again, with another $2 donation and just some more love with you, says.
He might take you out to dinner tonight.
I don't even understand this question, but yeah, maybe they could take you out to dinner tonight. They says, Miss Leslie, are you dating / available?
Like
as in slash.
Oh,
okay,
yeah, I thought slash was Guns N' Roses.
That was so, yeah. Are you available, Melinda Leslie?
I am single, not married, so I suppose that's a yes.
All right.
Oh, God, you guys are making it.
Anytime we can make you blush, it's always fun.
I might regret that because I don't know.
Infinity.
No, but yeah, no, I am. What can I say?
Infinity
I guess
Center.
the answer is yes. I'm single.
There you go. That's okay. No shame there. Infinity Center says, Lou, why do they need to follow people when we all carry smartphones? I'd say that's true, but nobody had a smartphone pre-2000.
And it's not just about following and surveillance. It's about them investigating you. It's almost like having a team of investigators or something looking into you to see, are you a person of interest to them? Do they want to involve themselves further with you? And they're mostly interested in cases with physical evidence. Here real quick, I'll share something if I can bring it up real quick. Let me see. Well, I'm going to just mostly read through something. I don't have to share it, but here we go. Okay, this one. Okay. I did just to have some stuff at hand, some screen saves of some of my PowerPoint just to have an image like notes in case I needed them. part of me is like, I know my research so good, but you guys, or at least Lou does. I don't know if Rather does, or Jane. I've had a kind of a rough family thing this weekend, and wasn't getting as much sleep and everything. And I said, God, I don't want to just like pull a blank and go, oh my God,
Yeah.
So I thought I need to have some
Sorry
cheat
to hear
sheet
that.
stuff. Yeah, cheat sheet stuff handy. So if I get there, I can, but so far everything's just poured out of me, and Okay, so here we go. Why is this happening? So what are they interested in? So again, what are they, looking for? And I can say from all the cases I've worked with, there's a couple things that come up consistently. There's maybe some others, but these are the primary. It's like 5 categories. One is they're interested in what the abductee knows about ET motives and agenda. What is the ET agenda? Or if there's different groups, what are the agendas of the different groups? That comes up. The group that you've been involved with, or groups if you've had more than one type in your experience. So ET motives and agenda. The other is ET and abductee genetics. Are you a hybrid? Have you been altered in your abduction experiences? Is there something about you genetically different? If they didn't alter, or was it already different? And this is another reason, not only it's well established that ET abductions run in families. In the people with doing this research, it's becoming established that the MILAB stuff runs in families. So ET and abductee genetics, ET and abductee psi abilities, psi meaning psychic paranormal abilities. Do you remote view? Do you do telekinesis, psychokinesis, etc.? Do you, which is affecting and moving matter with the mind, and of course remote viewing and other psychic abilities, other paranormal abilities. They're very interested in the people who have those abilities. If you're an abductee and you have those abilities, they're probably going to be interested in you. And then the fourth one is the development and practice of mind control. Now, I think that's more like they use fear, drugs, intimidation, and pain inducement as a way of repressing memory. Well, those are, you look up the history of MK Ultra and everything, those are good old-fashioned mind control techniques. Again, fear, intimidation, drugs, drugs, being hypnotized while drugged, and then pain inducement, and they can pretty much compartmentalize, memories and stuff. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect science, and people can still remember, break through the trauma, and or recall because of it locking in physically in the body, kind of thing. And so, but obviously they're using those practices in the experience and probably developing and getting better at it with doing so many abductees for so many years, and other, God only knows what other things where they might be abducting people, not just alien abductees, I mean, if they're doing this, where else are they doing it? My God, but regardless, they're obviously using, developing, and practicing over and over mind control. And then last but not least, and this is probably the biggest one, and it's the most obvious, like if I said to you guys, what do you think they're most interested in? Mental interface and the psi operation of ET technology, or any, basically that one is anything with the technology. So if you're an abductee and you've been shown alien mathematics, formulas, languages, they're going to be of interest in that. They're going to want that information from you. If you have any technology that you've retrieved or maintained, or that the ETs have left in your environment, they're going to want it or be interested in it. Some people who have had implants with the ETs will then have a military experience, like we had the late Dr. Roger Lear, right? Did 17 surgical removals of alien implants. Well, some people have a military experience and these guys remove an implant. So they're going to want that, and they'll do the removal. It's free at least. I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Shame on me. I guess somebody abductees mad at me. They're like, "Why is she laughing and smiling?"
People sometimes deal with that stuff with humor, and we do too here. That's how we deal with
it.
Hey,
if the military removes your implant, it was free. And
exactly.
Rogers didn't pass, so now he's not around to do it. And then some people have had an implant put in by the military. Now, that is something, a couple of people that I knew that claimed that they thought their implant was put in by the military were set up to be working with Roger Lear before he passed. And I'm not saying there's anything funny about his passing. He had a heart condition and went in through an outpatient surgery, not related to his heart, but he had already had a bad heart condition and had a lot of problems and a number of heart attacks. So that outpatient surgery, I think, was just too much stress for him. Again, I don't think there's anything fishy there. But unfortunately, he passed before he could work with some of these people. He had a lot of alien abductees lined up that he had already done all the x-rays and stuff. So he had a bunch of surgeries lined up. He had more people coming to him. He had people coming to him with these kind of implants. And unfortunately, he wasn't around to do anything about it. But going back to mental interface, psi operation, you guys have heard this, certainly the new Skinwalker book talks about this, consciousness interaction with the technology.
Well, we see people like Elon Musk already trying to attempt it.
Yeah, exactly. So mental interface, psi operation of the technology. Abductees with extensive abduction experiences do a lot of, flying the ship with your mind. They say you have to remote view where you're going for the ship to go there. They're sat at the controls by the ETs. They're shown how to do stuff. Some of them have piloted or flown ships, or at least had it explained to them, or they're sat at other computers. So this kind of stuff. So mental interface and psi operation of ET technology, and also the technology itself. So whatever you've seen, like with me, I saw a piece of ET technology that apparently the military was really interested in. Apparently, I had a military abduction experience where they gave me a post-hypnotic suggestion to, if I ever saw that piece again, I'd get more information about it. Well, I guess I did, because I had another military abduction where they retrieved some of that information from me. That took a lot of work to recall that memory of that experience. I was taken to a base that I've now had 6 different insiders, all unrelated to each other, over a 25-year period. 6 different insiders have verified where I was taken. One of them even once drew a map and he said, where the building's laid out like this. And it was exactly the way the buildings were laid out. So these are guys who had been there in their stint with the military or intelligence work. And they verified that where I was and what I saw actually exist. That was that same experience where I was, I guess you could say, questioned or interrogated about this ET technology piece. Anyway, so that, so that's the thing that seems obvious in this, is they're going to be interested in the abductees. If you've flown, navigated a ship, if you've seen technology, have the aliens taught you about their technology, everything from navigation propulsion systems to weapons and any of that they're going to be interested in. And so if you're an abductee and you've had those experiences, these guys are going to be interested in you. But also, if you have the psi abilities, and if you might have a genetic thing. I think they look at everybody that they involve themselves with for that. And some abductees that, like I said, it starts off just like very low, interest in them, but then it stops and it doesn't go further. Like I said, I have this chart, if you watch my online presentation, with this curved line of how it can ramp up. Some abductees go so far down that line that they actually get recruited into covert projects.
Yeah, I'm curious. Matthew Wright brings up an interesting question here. Have you ever heard of a case where someone maybe faked a Mill Labs or an abduction story? And how would you kind of weed those out?
Because their stuff's not going to match. It's going to be.
Have you had fraudsters come to you with
no?
Stories?
In the Mill Lab, I haven't had anyone come to me. I've had some people. There's an area where I'm very cautious and I don't really tread. I did for a while because I had to learn it, because again, some of my cases get recruited into programs, and that gets into the super soldier stuff. I'm not a super soldier researcher. It gets very complicated. And while I've met some people and investigated some cases that I think are absolutely legitimate and have absolute legitimate physical evidence, unfortunately, I think there's also a lot of wannabes. And so it's a very problematic area. And so because it's so problematic, I say I'm going to focus on alien abductees having stuff happen, because that's problematic. My friend Lorian Fenton researched some cases like that for a number of years, used to put on a super soldier conference. There were some people there that I believe were absolutely legit. I've met a few, but now you know, there's some channels and stuff out there where I think that a lot of people have glommed onto it, and I question whether all of them are. But you know what? Because I don't want to do the research there, so I just back off and say it's not my area.
So in the decades that you've been doing this, you haven't found somebody that's been overtly just lying to you?
Overtly lying to me. Not
where you get the story, okay, and you're like, no, I'm sorry, guy. Like, I can't.
Oh yeah, no, I won't even touch your story. Oh no, yeah. My initial interview, there's some people I've never proceeded with further.
Okay,
because I had problems with their case.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay,
so
we've got.
You know, over the years, how many people have come to me and approached me at conferences and events, and now some of them are legitimate cases that I just got busy. It was bad timing, and I didn't follow up. Right. So anyone out there, if you're like, well, she wasn't interested in my case and I'm legit, you can just say, maybe it was bad timing, approach me again. Okay. Because, you know, I get busy like this last weekend, Lou, you know, I would have shut everybody out, obviously.
I mean, you were busy. You thought our show was on Tuesday, so that's understandable.
Yeah. Exactly. Because I got that busy and just got confused on the dates. So, you know, but yeah, exactly. And I can't get really busy. So I tell people, but I admit, because I've had so many cases come to me, that I'm kind of screening for the people with evidence, like Rather was saying earlier, those people with evidence for their case. Okay. And so if someone's got evidence of their case, witnesses, video footage, documentation, photographic evidence, you know, medical records, you know, I'm going to be more interested, because I have so many cases that have all that. I mean, I have cases that have such great evidence that I'm like, I don't want to insult anyone out there, but it's like, I don't have the time to just hear everyone's experiences. But at the same time, I know there's no one else they can go to. So I got to be there to hear people's stories. But you guys, if I had anyone come to me that as soon as I heard their story, I went, I'm not buying it. Absolutely.
Okay, absolutely. Good. Well, that's good to hear. Okay, so then if you can, maybe sometime after the show, if you don't forget, post, because some people want to see some of these photos. So if you can post photos of, 5 or 6 photos, whatever, helicopters, bridges, whatever you want.
Put a link in, okay, or I can put it in the chat really quick for my
your website.
Well, no. I don't have a website for my research. This is a long story, but there's a debate with me and a friend who wants to build one for me. Yeah. I just have the one for my tours, which is through the Center for the New Age. But I have my presentation, and the last one I did where the whole presentation is online was 2019. So it's unfortunately been a while, but it was my presentation for UFO Denmark, and I did the whole MilLab presentation, and so all the pictures, my best ones,
that's online, right? This is online right now. Okay, so Rather's looking it up right now. We'll get that link in the description, but I want to get to a couple of questions because we're running out of time.
And I can put it in the chat or do something.
Yeah. Or if you want, there's a private chat here too on the right hand side in the room. If you want to drop the link in there, then we can also share it with the audience.
Here, I'll do that.
So while you're looking for that, Sonic Gravity had a question. If we could also just shorten a couple of these answers, because I want to try and get through all these questions.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. So Bradley Voorhees asked, did you experience memory loss / memory wipe? And if so, how long and under what circumstances? Did you regain your memory? I have PTSD, and when you think you're being stalked, you don't say shit to anyone. So
exactly. No, exactly. I mean, people, abductees are so uncomfortable even admitting their alien stuff that they don't get into this,
right?
And except for when they really trust you and know they can go there, like the guy who's came with his mom, talked all about alien experiences. She goes in the restroom. He says, I want to see you privately tomorrow. And opens up about his experiences with this, but they know they can trust me, and I'm not going to go public with someone's stuff. I never use a name unless I have permission to use their name. And then there are people I definitely have permission to use their name. And then there's some cases that don't even want me talking about it, and I don't. Even you guys, there's a really important, very historical, significant case that I so badly wish I could say something about, and that gentleman's been very, very mad at me to not say anything, and it really bums me because it's important in ufology. It's an important ufological famous case, but it's like, okay,
you got to
I
respect
say
those
some
wishes.
stuff. Well, I say some stuff, but there's a whole bunch I cannot say, and I have promised that gentleman I wouldn't. At one time I did, and he got very upset, so I don't do it anymore. But I've had a few cases make it very clear from the get-go. I don't want this talked about. I don't want anyone to know. What one guy said, don't use my name, no specifics, but I can. There are a number of cases that I can talk about. I just don't use their names.
Right. No, that makes sense. Solid, who was also asking if what you're doing for dinner tonight, says that he's ready for the full My Lab experience. So hit him up. I think this is the question.
I don't do the abducting. And be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, there you go. This is true.
There's a few. Oh, it's good.
Leave it alone. Let's move on. Let's move on, Melinda.
So what do you think about CE5, Melinda? Because I feel like I hesitate to tell people to try to come into contact with beings, and then this angle makes it me even more likely to.
No. First off,
yeah,
that's why all the abductees say that the MILAB experiences are a lot worse than the ET ones, because a lot of those people are having very positive ET experiences. ET experiences can be traumatic, but that's quite often the person's reaction to it because they're new to it. And as soon as an abductee realizes they've had more experiences and they live with it a number of years, they tend to integrate it. And you end up sounding like a Whitley or like a me or like a Travis or somebody who goes like, it's okay. You even look at Travis's history of the way he used to talk about it 30 years ago and the way he talks about it now, night and day. So you do grow with it and you go, okay, I wasn't harmed. I'm returning in one piece. Some abductees are healed and we're taught stuff and they help us with our psi abilities, so there's a lot of growth through having the experience. But I'm not ruling out, because again, abductees out there, don't get mad. Are some people traumatized? Yes, but not necessarily because the experience was, quote, bad. It was their reaction to it, the high strangeness, the otherworldly. And then the trauma comes from living with it. As I already said, family, friends, there could be trauma there. So they can be traumatic, but going back to what you're saying, but a lot of people have healings and like I said, learn stuff and everything. Now, as far as making contact, it's like doing anything paranormal, put your thinking cap on, be smart about it, maybe do energy protection work, know what your beliefs are and where you stand, but I mean, I take people on tours every night. Obviously I have no problem with CE5 stuff. Now I don't claim that I'm leading CE5 stuff, but occasionally I have a client say, oh, can you lead a meditation or a visualization? If someone wants me to do that, I'll do that. But we just look up with military night vision. This is Sedona. It's a hot spot. They're always here, so we have sightings, thank God. These for nice successful business, thank God, because they're always here. But I go out and make contact every night and we flash at them with lasers. We get them to flash back. And yes, I know about iridium flares and all that stuff. I cover all that, for those who are thinking satellites. But when we get a structured craft and you're hitting it with lasers and the lasers reflect and bounce off of it, that's an amazing experience. We've had that happen a number of times, where the lasers hitting metal and reflecting off. And so obviously I have no problem, because when we're flashing them, they flash back. There's a lot of time, I said earlier, even with the technology with this, there's a consciousness interaction. I tell my clients on the tour every night, there's a consciousness interaction. What you say and think during an experience matters. And if my clients are of the right frame of mind and have a very positive attitude, we have a much better tour. It's proven itself. I just did last night was tour 1,475. It has proven itself in spades in 1,475 tours. The attitude of my clients has everything to do with how an evening goes.
Wow. Oh, man, I got so many questions about the tour.
So,
I don't even think we're going to be able to get to them.
5 stuff. I mean, I do it. What can I say? Occasionally we're doing it. So I have no problem. But like anything paranormal, go into it, be smart, use discernment. But if you go in with anything in life, isn't that true about anything, you guys? With a positive attitude, a positive outlook, you have a positive life.
Sonic Gravity with a $10 question says, and again, we've got about 14 minutes here left.
Okay.
So, what if any percentage? No, it's okay. What if any percentage of female?
I have things I was going to cover, like a cheat sheet.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, honestly,
3 out of 8, maybe. You know?
You got plenty in your head.
Yeah, there's not a show long enough to get all of this in. So again, we're gonna have to have Melinda Leslie back. But he asked, what if any percentage of female abductees you've met / investigated experience gynecological problems following the abduction?
A lot. Like, that's very common. And
Okay.
urological stuff for guys, very, very common.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's short-lived and then you get over it, and sometimes they have it a long time. No, there's all sorts of physical things with abductions and the MILABs. I mean, the MILABs, they can be rough. They can, harm you, beat you up, whatever. They can be rough. And so, now, like anything in life, you heal through stuff, and so people, they haven't hurt someone where it's been permanent, thank God, and in alien abductions, you can have all sorts of reactions and physical things. What was the exact question again?
No, I think you answered it. You answered it. You answered it perfectly. The answer is yes. That there are
I'll learn to do that, Lou.
There are effects to the pelvic region. Okay.
Someday in an interview, I'm going to shock everyone. I'll just go, yes, or no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that'd be great.
Be no fun.
Okay, so a question from Haya Den Amug, who asks, ever had medical examination physical after one of these MyLab abductions? Like, have you ever gone straight to a doctor after?
Not me, but I've worked with cases that have. I've considered doing so. Well, actually, yes. Okay, once. I had a MyLab experience where I think I had a procedure done in the experience that was an abortion type procedure. I ended up through a MUFON group, long story short, and a lecture I did for, not online, but this was back when lectures would happen in person. And this MUFON group that had someone in their group who came up to me afterwards and wanted to talk to me privately. This guy said he was a gynecological surgeon, and I talked more about the experience in that particular presentation, and then he asked me more about it. He, at the end of our talking for about a half hour, we're staying in the patio after this event, and maybe even like 45 minutes it's whatever, but for a while. And he ended up asking me a lot about the experience, and he ended up then telling me, you're explaining a specific kind of abortion type procedure that happens when there is a problem pregnancy. Something didn't take, and it was malformed in the wall of the uterus. Okay. And he said, it's an very early term procedure if they're able to determine right away that something didn't take and that you risk having a problem from it. And he said that's the procedure. And he said at the end of the conversation, he said, I tried to redirect you and lead you, and you were correcting me. And he said, everything you said and the fact you were correcting me, you were telling the real experience. So even though I tried to suggest something to you, you were saying, no, I don't remember it that way. It was like this. And he said, you had this procedure. I perform this often. You had this procedure. And that procedure happened in a MILAB event. Now, that was not, I didn't go to a doctor's office, and that wasn't formal. It was a guy after a MUFON thing who was a surgeon who talked to me in the patio of the place where the lecture facility was. Now, I have had a case that has had extensive stuff. She ended up going to her doctor because they were using a lot of drugs on her. And the doctor took a bunch of hair samples and blood samples and determined after some of her experiences, she had some very elaborate drugs done, and helped her or worked with a researcher. She had a whole team of people researching her case that determined that one of the drugs that she had been given that showed up in her blood and hair sample, and this was a while after an experience, so that's why retained in the hair afterwards, but that drug is only made in one specific CIA contracted lab, and that's the only place that drug comes from. And they were able to determine that was the drug. and it's only made one place, and it's a.
Do you know what the name of the drug was?
I don't.
Okay.
I might have it in writing somewhere. I am off the top of my head.
Okay.
And
No
it's a
worries.
technical
All right.
thing.
I'm going to
But
move on
I
to.
probably have it in writing in my notes on her case.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next question. Has Semivan said when the government would finally disclose what it knows to vindicate experiencers' claim that Earth is being visited by extraterrestrial beings?
You guys, abduction stuff isn't going to happen for a very, very, very long time, if ever. No, I mean, yeah, no. Don't be holding your breath on the abduction stuff. I mean, it took 75 years to even get to, oh, look, there's things in the sky that are real and we should pay attention, and we might get crash retrievals, and we might, with crash retrievals come alien bodies. So if we go there real fast, that you talk about a game changer,
Yeah.
but abductions, no, that's not coming. No.
So what
I mean,
about
maybe at some point, but not anytime in the near future. That's
So
for sure.
that covert military group, though, that might be tracking UFOs with satellites, is you were suggesting as a theory?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right.
yeah,
So
I
they're
think
truly-
the
so you
Senate
really
and
think-
Congress with the Gillibrand Amendment and everything, hopefully they'll get satellite data, and the DNI, so hopefully they'll get into that, and there will be satellite data, and it'll be very telling, because that's there, no doubt. I mean, Ron Regehr said the DSP spy satellite wasn't, designed for catching UFOs. It's a spy satellite that just happens to be getting, and by the way, the government has an official term for these objects when they enter the atmosphere, and that's fast walkers. So he said the DSP spy satellite regularly caught fast walkers, objects that would come in from deep space under intelligent control, enter our atmosphere, and change direction. And he said the DSP spy satellite was getting this data all the time. That's one spy satellite out of many. What do you bet others are getting data? Not to mention, could anyone controlling the subject matter put a satellite up just for tracking, or multiple satellites up just for tracking this data? I think the obvious answer, it's just totally logical to go, yeah, of course they did. Now, that doesn't mean that was done through USAPs. Does that mean unacknowledged special access programs? Does that mean Senate and Congress will get access to that data? We'll see. But will they get like the DSP spy satellite data and other satellites that are catching these things by chance? I think the answer is, oh yeah, I think they will. I don't know if it'll be in the first data or how far down, but you guys, what are we talking? Reports every 90 days for 5 years? Yeah, they'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last question, and then I've got some math that I want to run by you.
Okay.
So the first is, so the question is, hey, Melinda, wondering if you have any thoughts on the United States Air Force involvement with the Terry Lovelace case. Also,
Yes.
How was your recent trip with John Ramirez? Was he cursing about rather be squidding? And we've got about 6 minutes left. So
no, he liked Rather. He appreciates the tough questions. No, Rather, he loved you. He loved you. No problem there. No problem. I mean, did I ask him about it? Yeah, he loved. He had a good time. So you're all good. You're all good.
Oh wow, there you go.
That is good to hear.
Okay.
He goes, oh, Rather, he's nothing.
Well, do you? Okay, so then, any thoughts on the United States involvement with Terry Lovelace? Then?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if you could keep it.
Now there are some abductions where the other, in Terry's case, on board that big craft, there were guys in uniform, and military guys, that weren't abducted with him and his friend, and they looked like they knew what they were doing. Now, as far as what that is, and were they there in an official capacity, or were they other abductees? I'd have to ask Terry more. But in his story, there's this element of these guys on board the ship, so that's a MyLab type element. But even more so is all the stuff that happened to Terry after he got back, and the guy coming in to interrogate him in the room and everything. So there are elements in that story that are definitely MyLab elements. And Terry admits that. He knows that there's those elements there, and harassment and surveillance stuff. I mean, he's got it. Most of the advanced abductee cases, and advanced doesn't mean better, just means you're got an in-depth, complicated case, multiple experiences throughout your life, are having MyLab stuff. Like I can be an abductee and start to learn about their stories and their family history and everything, and I'm never, once I know all that, I'm not surprised if they bring up the MILAB stuff, because I'm almost expecting it, because if someone's a really advanced, involved case, they have it going on. And like Terry,
Right.
Whitley, extensively. Whitley's, now that's a person who's very cautious about talking about that part of his experience. For as public as he is, I keep twisting his arm. One day I'll get him to do something with me and really start talking about, but Whitley's absolutely had it. Like I said, you could rattle off, Betty and Barney Hill had MILAB stuff happen after that original experience. I have sat down with Kathleen and talked about this. They had constant stuff going on. Harassment, surveillance, befriended by insiders, being watched, being followed, being picked up again. Barney was picked up and interrogated by the military. I mean, yeah, they have it extensively.
Okay. All right. So this is where I'm going to end this. And then, of course, I'll give you an opportunity to give us your thoughts. But I appreciate, of course, you coming by again, Melinda.
Sure.
And again, this conversation for our audience, because we're very middle of the road. Some of them love it. Some of them absolutely can't stand this conversation. But I like having these conversations because they're different.
Okay,
they're different. Hold on a second. Wait a second. They're different. And they force people to have an open mind. And so that's why I like these conversations. But that's not what I wanted you to respond to. I don't care about haters. I mean, I'm not here to feed the appetite of the mob. Okay. Yeah. I love my audience, but we're not here.
There's a mob on both sides, so you can't.
Yeah, there's everyone. There's a lot of love, and then there's, of course, the handful of people who don't like this conversation because they think it's too crazy, which I also can relate to. I understand why you think that. I get it.
So,
but at the same time, we're not
never mind the physical evidence. Watch my presentation. You the haters out there, watch my whole presentation. See my evidence. See the physical evidence. And that's just a sampling of it, because I had to just pick a few things to show in a presentation. But at least there's a few good things in there. Look at that evidence and go, when I say I have a guy who was you have someone like a Terry Lovelace and his credibility, you look at his whole background, and extremely credible individual. But even my guy who was the head sheriff for 2 counties, having this happen extensively. You guys, there's no benefit to anybody making this up.
Right.
None. None of these people have gotten paid for any of their stuff. They risk ridicule. They risk their family leaving them. There's no benefit to it. Even Whitley doesn't make money on his books anymore, is lamenting about it. And did he at one time? Yeah, but he's not now, because his publishers said, move on to a different subject. We're tired of this. And it seriously. Right. So you go, okay, so you go, it's like, and as everything moves forward, this disclosure stuff, abduction stuff's taken the back burner, back closet, the back burner, and it's like, wait a second, and obviously you point out earlier, rather, these are illegal things with the MILABs. Someone's got to answer for that at some point. I'm glad that Jim wants to look into it. Maybe he'll find some information, and maybe he'll let me share some information that he finds. That's what I'm hoping. I'm willing to share with them, because I could get so much out of it. My experience is already out there. My research is out there. If I share with him what's already out there, there's nothing new to it. But if he can come back with information for me, that's worth its weight in solid gold. But I say that the naysayers out there, you guys, be nice to the abductees. They've gone through a lot, especially the ones going through this. It's extreme trauma.
No, and I think that's fair. And I think
be respectful, be nice. They've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And pay attention to the physical evidence. All my research, my abduction research, my research about my own experiences, and my MILAB research is all 100% evidence-based. That's why I said I'm only interested in the evidence cases. Sorry, everybody, but it's just too much. I do too many things. I'm interested in the evidence cases, because what can I present out there? What can I eventually include in a book? And then the book, it doesn't make any money in this field. That's just to share the information with all of you, because y'all are demanding to see the evidence. So it's eventually I got to put it out there. Right. But it's like, you guys, that's about educating people. It's not about the money. No one makes money in this field. That's just nuts.
Well, this is.
Dr.
I mean,
Glitter, maybe that's
people.
it.
I feel like people. Some people make money. I mean, look, I make money in this field, but it's not like I'm buying a house with this money.
Well, yeah, I pay my bills.
A new
I
car,
with my tours and my readings. Yeah,
look,
because
I don't think
that
there's
pays
a
my
shame.
bills, pays my rent. Yeah.
I don't think there's a shame in making money in this
And
discussion. As long as you're being honest with what you're doing.
Lou, I agree with you. When people give a hard time about that, it just strikes me as, well, you get paid for what you do, that people get paid for their expertise, their time, and their energy, and that's appropriate because doing all this stuff costs money. You know how much money I spend every year doing this stuff?
I can't even imagine. Imagine. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're out of time, but what I wanted to do, and I think this is part of the reason, and again, let me preface this by saying I think the experiencers are going to have their day in the sun, especially when you hear a sitting active congressman say that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is something that's being kicked around in classified briefings on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
I think the experiencers are going to have their day in the sun. But with that said,
and a couple of major researchers I've joined up with in the field, heads of UFO research organizations, we're creating something called the Contact Rights Coalition for people with contact experiences, that their rights are protected and that we are included in the conversation. And so we're actually forming a group to do just exactly what you're saying. I
cannot wait to read and see about that. So when that does come to fruition,
I'll let you know, because
let's talk about it.
And it involves Dan Sheehan and Kathleen Martin and Whitley and Terry Lovelace. So we can have me and one of them, or just have them on to talk specifically about that.
Well, if I get you and Danny Sheehan on the same show, I'll never be able to talk. That's for sure. Okay, but let me say this. Okay, so the closest thing that I can think of in American history that comes even close to this MyLabs theory that you're putting on the table is MK Ultra. MK Ultra was conducted from 1953 to 1973 with roughly about 300 people that were subjected to that top secret CIA study, and it was also conducted in universities, hospitals, and prisons. And it also involved some Canadians and just regular citizens. Okay. Now, you're saying within the United States, there's roughly about 3 million people that experience this abduction phenomenon. 15% of that, which is the number you threw out, would be 480,000 people that have gone through this MyLabs experiment. So,
and that's based on what, 12% or 15%?
15%. Okay. Now, if
you shave some off that, it's a giant number.
Here's how I did the math. Okay, so 15% is 480,000 people. If you divide that many people over 80 years. Okay, I added 20 years. I put 60 originally, but then I put 80 just to bump it up, just to be safe. An 80-year study, which is already 60 years longer than MK Ultra, which is a long time. You're talking about that's 6,000 people per year, and that's 16 and a half people that are taken by our government per day. I have a hard time putting even if you cut that number to a third, that's 5.5 people per day.
And
hold on a second. Wait a second. This is where I have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with, number one, how do you hide a program like that? Because MK Ultra was revealed to the public 2 years after it was finished. So 1975. It only took them 2 years to find this. So my issue with this is that you've had 80-year history of this, and no congressional hearings, nobody within Congress knows about this. Where does the money come from? How do you, from a logistics standpoint, take 16 people a day, or even 5? 5 to me even seems like a lot. So how is that? How is the logistics of this? Well, no, this is just the United States.
I'm talking though. This hasn't come up yet.
Right.
This is not just a U.S. thing. This is a
no. I understand thing. It's not a U.S. thing. I'm just using the numbers and sort of based off of the the numbers that we know about here within the United States. That's what I'm focused on, because even just that seems like an insurmountable program to effectively administer, if that makes sense.
Well, 12% of the respondents, I think the MUFON one was higher, like 15%, but 12 to 15% of the respondents in the questionnaires done by the free organization of over 4,000 people, and MUFON, I'd have to ask Kathleen or even Gwen Farrell what their numbers are, but they came up with the same kind of percentage. So even if you took it down to 12% of the abductees filling out, or people who think they've had abduction, filling out the questionnaires, answering those questions, like I said, key indicator questions, kind of stuff that are MILAB related, but they didn't get into many harassment surveillance. There were a few questions about that, but they said the people who said they were abducted by the military or saw military during their abductions is the 12% number. And yet you go, okay, now those are 12% of the numbers. So could it be slightly skewed because you already have people thinking they're alien abductees taking these questionnaires for free in MUFON, alien abductees and contactees. So that can skew the number just slightly. I understand that. But I also said, I think the number's more like 40% of those people, based upon the fact that they didn't ask the right questions. When they ask the right questions, I expect 40, maybe even 60% of all the people taking those abduction questionnaires for those organizations. But so when we say the 3,700,000 alien abductees, according to the Roper poll, it maybe that's not the number to go with. It depends on how many people. So the actual percentage would be how many people of the people that, well, we know it's 4,000 with. So so I guess 12% of 4,000 of those people, so I'm saying you are asking questionnaires of people who are already answering them based upon believing or thinking they're an abductee or contactee. But when the questions are unique to this, people don't go, oh yeah, I've had harassing phone calls, unless they have. Particular alien abductees.
What is considered a harassing phone call? And I'm sorry, we don't have time.
Someone calling you up and threatening you,
okay.
Or saying, stop talking or else, that kind of thing.
I'll get a call and it will be like nobody, and it will hang up. And so I don't think anything.
No, this is actually words or comments about their alien abduction experiences, And
this might be a huge program then, right?
That's what I'm saying. This program has to be massive. It has to be a massive program.
Yeah, that's what.
But how do you?
You're saying the same stuff Jim Semivan did, which is this has got to be massive. It's a lot. I want to know who's funding it. I want to know how it's funded. I want to know who's managing it, and I got the connections to find out. And he does. So I'm like, maybe he does. You go back to the Wilson thing and the guy having his hand slapped over asking about what was going on, the reverse engineering of what we think is probably Lockheed, and you don't have, even being the position of J2, he didn't have the need to know, Now Jim probably doesn't have the need to know, but does he know people that maybe can look and would look for him? Even it'd be very interesting if one of those guys turns back to Jim and says, don't ask me. But for Jim already to have asked someone he has with connections to say he has evidence of my involvement, I haven't seen it yet, but Jim isn't going to say, I have this, I'm going to show it to you, unless he has it. Because he knows as soon as I meet him again, the first thing I'm going to do is show it to me. Like, I ain't going to say squat with you till you show that to me.
Right. No, and again, like, I'm not asking, and I love the way you answered the question, because you didn't take it offensively, even though we offended again Linda Thompson. Like, that's not the point, But I want to get
Linda, don't be offended. You gotta be thick skin in this community, man. You have
to be able to take questions. You have to be able to ask questions.
But I get it.
The reason why I ask the questions is because that just seems,
I get it.
For me,
and we have so many new people into these subjects. Right. That even though I've been out there, talking about this stuff and doing the research for at least 30 or 32 years, and then there was people before, who did talk about it, like Carla Turner comes to mind. But yet a lot of people new to the field, they go, who's that? They've never heard any of it. So I realized, okay, I got to go back and start in the beginning for those people that don't know, right. and Rather, I see you as the challenge. If I can make Rather take some of this seriously, Score one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Rather takes it seriously. It's just, does Rather believe
Or
it?
even consider it.
Yeah, I think he considers it. I think he considers it. It's just,
these are
Rather watch my presentation. There, I have the evidence there that the kind of things you did ask earlier. You'll see examples.
Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
And also, there's nobody who wants to be more wrong than Rather. Like, Rather wants to be wrong on his cynicism of this. I think we all do. But I mean, cynicism is a natural human reaction to information when you get it.
Well,
so
no, I know
you got to be allowed to talk through the cynicism.
It's a lot to understand, which is why I said, be compassionate, understanding for the people that have been through this. They've been through trauma. No ridicule. Examine the evidence and we'll go from there. And maybe eventually the truth, will fully come out on this as well. It's going to be a big jump just to address. Well, first we got to address crash retrievals. Then we got to address that there's an alien presence somewhere way down the road. We got to get into alien abductions, and then eventually there's this, and probably this will come quick on the heels of alien abductions, because as soon as alien abductees feel they can talk about this more openly, you're going to hear a lot about it.
Okay, so then there was what the question, obviously, besides trying to get a grasp of how big this program could potentially be, my next question is, well, how do you know that this is not just the phenomenon itself presenting itself in a different filter as this government,
the physical evidence, the similarities in the stories? It's like, even with the abduction research, it's like so many people experiencing the same types of things. There's like categories of things, but they come up in hundreds of thousands of cases, or at least thousands. It's like constant. Same with this. In my cases, there's these constant things that come up. And that's, like I said, I'm interested in the physical evidence. That's those physical evidence for the cases. And, obviously there's a covert human interest in the abductees for those 5 categories of reasons that I talked about. And mostly they want to know what the abductees have seen or experienced about the technology. As simple as that sounds, that's number one in the covert guys. They want to know, did you handle it? Did you operate? Did you fly it? They want to know. And if you did, how did you do it? They want to know that. And I think they're data mining us for information that they can take and train individuals that they work with to do stuff. And if you're really advanced in it and you have really advanced experiences, you yourself as an abductee, and I've worked with many people that have had this happen, they get recruited into actual government programs.
Melinda Leslie, 2 hours flew by, my lady. Thank you so much for coming by. That was an
Thank you for having
blast.
me. Great.
I always,
everybody, Jane, great questions, you guys. Great questions.
Thank you. So real quick before you get out of here, please tell everyone where they can find your work and if they have any questions or even cases that they may want to throw your way.
Well, UFOsightingtours.com is all about my tours. What I do here in Sedona, and I've done a lot as of last night. And so that's that. UFOsightingtours.com is my information, which I need to update, but at least it's there. Okay, and then for my research, I recommend the last 2 presentations that actually one of them I've done again, but the only one online. So online is my MILAB presentation and my history of the working group presentation for for UFO Denmark. And both of those can be found on YouTube. And I highly recommend watching both of those. By the way, Lou, let's still do another panel with Grant and Rich Dolan. Let's do another panel about the working group, because we didn't get very far with that, and the 3 of us have a lot more to say. And the working group is what's behind, because the working group goes back to ATIP, OSAP, BASS, NIDS, working group, Aviary, working
we'll do
group.
It.
That's
we'll do
that
it.
whole history. Let's do it.
We'll do it. I'm in for sure. All right, Melinda Leslie, thank you again so much. Yeah.
Real quick, it's worth saying my whole interest in the history of the working group and its 40-year history started because that group of people, of which Gary Nolan is one, and Jacques and all these other guys, they had a full interest in abductions and abductees from day one. Their original meeting minutes and agenda are about 2 things: technology, and abductees. That's been their primary interest from day one. And I have that in spades. When you watch that presentation, it's all in there.
Well, just do me one last favor, and please tell all of the experiencers out there, including Linda Thompson, that I'm not a bad guy.
No, of course you're not.
All right, Melinda, we'll see you soon, my lady. Thank you so much.
You guys are all asking the right questions. You're interested. You're looking. Welcome to the field. You're all smart. You're engaged. All I can do is applaud that.
You're the best. I love your face. Thank you, Melinda. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Love yours too. Thank you.
Ciao. Woo! Melinda Leslie always comes in strong, man.
Yeah,
always,
so much,
it's
so much to learn.
Experiencers. It's the experiences. They are an experience.
Right.
I
mean, well, we talk about this all the time. Like, imagine having a car accident. You've got the story, you've got witnesses, you've got the car, and you go to your family and you say, "Hey, I just had this terrible car accident." They all look at you like, "No, you didn't." I want to go talk to a therapist about my car accident. Are you sure you want to go do that? Do you really need to see a therapist because you had a car accident, And so, like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating from an experiencer standpoint, because they're trying to be open, they're trying to be honest with you, they're trying to be vulnerable, and then we take that honesty, vulnerability, and we just kind of shit all over it sometimes with our questions. And it's not intentional. Like, it doesn't come from a place of meanness. We're genuinely asking the questions. And look, these are the questions that our senators are going to ask. These are the questions that everyday soccer moms and people that have nothing to do with this topic, these are the questions they're going to have, and there's going to have to be answers for them. Sorry, there's just going to have to be. And doesn't necessarily mean that the answer has to be right, but there's got to be something there.
Yeah, well, I believe that this phenomenon is real. And I think it's time for us all to take it into our own hands, which is, supporting Melinda Leslie and helping her to get the physical evidence that she needs to make her point, right? We all have to help each other and take this to the next level so that it can leave the realms of the woo-woo and we can start accepting this, because I do believe this phenomenon is real and
I think
going on. And
I think we're getting there. I really do. I think this year is going to be a big step for this conversation as a whole. We have to be patient. We have to wait and see what comes out and what happens. But I really do. I really think this year is going to be a very progressive year for this conversation. So, man, thank you guys for being here, for helping me with the interview. I truly appreciate it. Jane, you've got a brand new video that you just put out. Can you tell the people about it real quick before you get out of here?
Yeah, it actually kind of goes in line with kind of this conversation of, should we be aware of the government or the aliens?
Yeah.
I break down Close Encounters of the Third Kind again, because I think it might be getting at that a little bit. So.
For sure. Well, go check out Jane's channel. Her link is in the description below. Rather, are you working on anything coming out this week, or are you still researching?
Yeah, I'm researching quantum computers. Hope to put out a video this weekend.
Right on. Awesome. Well, you guys, I cannot thank everybody in the chats enough. Preston Paget with a $5 donation says, "I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul." Thank you, Preston. I truly appreciate it. Mr. Calhoun, the Sparky Lady, Solid, Ratwolf, MJ Sedona, Haya Moog, Sonic Gravity, Alex Kowalski, Protagonist, Awaiting Aliens, Solid. All you guys, thank you so much for the super chats and super stickers. And welcome back, Linda Thompson. I don't know if you'll be back next show, but I loved having you here for at least one. It's always fun to see you in the chat. I want to say thank you to everybody who watched today. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share. It's a great way to support the channel. Before we get out of here, of course, I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes on the show. Speaking of iTunes, this show will be available on iTunes, Spotify, podcasts, wherever you find them. Leave us a rate review. It goes to make sure that the show continues to grow. Thank you to the Patreons. Thank you to future Patreons. Thank you to the Super Chatters. Thank you to the members of the channel. Truly appreciate your financial support. Again, we are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you to be here 3 days a week, so we truly appreciate it. I want to say thank you to the moderators of the chat. Check out the links below to our Discord, to our merch store. Shout out to KGRADB, where we have our show live every Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. And I think that's it, you guys. Who do we got Friday coming up? Who's Friday?
Shoot,
Does anybody know?
I don't have my normal.
I got the
I don't have my
calendar right
normal
here.
stuff
Okay,
up
so we've
there.
got Matthew Zagatis from the UAPX. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, professor at the University of Albany. So this will be a very interesting science-forward discussion. So you guys are not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about UAPX and all of that stuff. Until next time, you guys, thank you so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP, UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez for Jane Kyle and Mr. Ratherby Squidding. We will see you guys on Friday tomorrow, Singularity Lab. Don't forget, 4 o'clock. So come check us out there. I'll be sharing the link on the Twitter. So look out for that. And yeah, that's it. We love you guys. Stay safe out there. Peace. I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.